Voice of College Football, breaking down each team across America. We'll get to as many as possible, breaking down position by position. We head toward Clemson, looking to get back to the college football playoffs. Still, of course, defending ACC champions. We got our guy, Jason Priester, on the line. AllClemsonTigers.com is your destination for Clemson football coverage there. All right, Jason, everybody's wanted to see Cade Klubnik. We got bits and pieces last year. We got a full game in the Orange Bowl, of course. He came in, based on my recollection, against Syracuse. Got a lot of credit for that win, but other things were going on there. And, of course, relieved DJ Uiagalelei a number of times. But this is the guy. And, what is your thought about how prepared he is? Because at times he looked prepared last year. At other times he looked a bit overwhelmed.
Yeah, I thought he looked like, a freshman at times last year, which was not surprising considering, some of the stuff we heard from the coaching staff, some of the people I had talked to off the record. It just looked like a freshman. Maybe needed a year to get fully acclimated. I think Cade Klubnik is going to take a big jump in his development between his freshman year and this sophomore year that's coming up, especially now with Garrett Riley in charge. He's kind of a quarterback whisperer, if you will. There's just a lot of things to like about the way Cade Klubnik fits into what Garrett Riley wants to do on offense. For me, the biggest thing with Klubnik is, he's got to stay healthy. Clemson's got another former 5-star on the roster in Chris Vezina, but he's just a true freshman. And I think he's another guy that's going to need a season. Not sure he's going to be ready to start. It'll be interesting to see how it plays at that backup spot behind Klubnik. Hunter Helms held on to that role throughout the spring. You got Paul Tyson, who transferred in during the offseason. He was banged up during the spring, so we didn't see any of him. But it'll be interesting to see that battle at backup would be one to watch during fall camp. But, again, like you say, all eyes are going to be on Cade Klubnik. This is his team now. He is going to be expected to turn around an offense that has vastly underperformed for 2 consecutive seasons and got an offense that has got less than stellar quarterback play, and that's probably putting it nicely. Expectations are going to be high. Well, we'll see how he handles it.
I am searching through the Rolodex here and thinking of all the top quarterbacks I can come up with over the last 5 to 10 years in college football. And many of them got started right away, were on the field, got thrown into the fire, but had a little bit of time, like a Deshaun Watson, had a half a season to sit back and get going. Trevor Lawrence even, and he would probably be the best example I can come up with right out of the gate as a guy that got thrown in pretty early, but still it was 3 or 4 games before he was given the number 1 spot. Justin Fields had time at Georgia just over and over. Even Bryce Young was a redshirt freshman. He had that full redshirt season, through passes in meaningless games the year before. So everybody's had kind of a ramp up. And so we need to take it easy on Cade Klubnik. He went into some high weight, high leverage positions last year against the likes of Notre Dame and Syracuse trailing. So there's a lot there, and a lot, even though I know people are excited about Chris Vezina, again, hold back on, the expectations of what he should be ready for right now. There's a lot to take in there.
Yeah. Absolutely. Some guys need more time than others. We've seen it over and over throughout the years. And I think Chris Vezina has all the tools, all the intangibles to be a very good quarterback at the Power 5 level. I just think he's a guy that's going to need a year. Just watching him, a little bit we got to watch a practice during the spring, watching him in the spring game. I just think he's going to be a guy that needs a little bit of time to adjust and acclimate, maybe to the speed of the game. Those things take time. But I think he's going to be very good. I think he's probably not quite as polished coming out of high school as Klubnik was. And we all saw Klubnik needed a little bit of time. So it's not unusual. I think the coaching staff, if they have their way, would prefer to redshirt Vezina this year. Dabo Swinney talked about it a little bit during the spring. We'll see if they're able to do that. But I think if they have their way, that's what's going to happen.
We are breaking down Clemson football position by position right here at the Voice of College Football. We appreciate Jason Priester stopping by on a regular basis to talk up the Tigers. You can catch him at allclemsontigers.com. Jason, this was just yesterday. I had somebody bring up on a call-in show DJ Uiagalelei to me and how bad he was. And I said, absolutely, he was not the quarterback that he needed to be for this level of program. He's certainly disappointed. Certainly that first year was even worse. And then he got a little bit better last year. But let's understand the wide receiver play. And we've talked about this a number of times, and I'm sure you've written about it a zillion times, just to take the level of play at that position at this school from about 2012 or 13 to just a couple of years ago, that was arguably the best in college football. And then just guys out there, guys that you would expect to see at a mid-tier school somewhere in the Big 10 or the Big 12 or something. And just the wide receiver play has got to get better.
Oh, absolutely. There is absolutely no denying that wide receiver play has been one of the biggest problems on the offensive side of the ball the past couple of years. Probably the second biggest thing outside of the lackluster quarterback play. Lots of drops, just a lack of physicality compared to what we've seen in years past, blocking on the perimeter. Just you name it, man, and we've seen it. I think there are a lot of things that kind of led to it being this way. I think you miss on some guys. You miss on a guy here and there. He's not what you thought he was going to be. And the biggest thing is Clemson's just had a ton of injuries. Can't keep those guys healthy. And that's going to be the biggest thing this year. You're looking at Bo Collins, Adam Randall, and Antonio Williams being your three key guys at receiver. And Randall had multiple injuries last year, tore ACL before the season started. Not sure he ever was fully healthy when he came back, and then suffered a finger injury or a hand injury. I can't remember specifically what it was, but and Bo Collins has been a guy that struggled with injuries at times too. Those guys have got to stay healthy for you this season. They just have to. There's not a ton of experience depth behind them. I like what Clemson's done with the wide receiver room in the last recruiting class. I think they got a lot of value with some of those guys, but I'm not sure how much of an impact they're going to make as freshmen. Another guy that's been hurt his first 2 years is Troy Stellato. Very, very fast guy. Was one of the fastest guys in his recruiting class. That has, barely seen the field. He's played very few snaps his first 2 seasons. He also tore ACL before the season last year. Be interesting to see if he can stay healthy, and if he does stay healthy, how much of those injuries is had an impact. How much of those injuries impacted his speed? Because that is something Clemson's lacked on the perimeter last couple of years is speed. Ronan Hannafin's kind of a wild card. Not an early enrollee, another freshman receiver. He was your highest rated receiver coming out of high school, but he might be a guy that needs a year. Big body guy. He's got some wheels. He can move. And then you got Tyler Brown. He's a freshman, not an early enrollee. Smaller guy, under 6 foot tall, if I'm remembering that right. But he is a burner. He's a guy that's going to give you some speed. Of those freshman receivers, including Noble Johnson, I forgot to mention him. He was the only early enrollee Clemson had at receiver in 2023. And I think he's got an extremely high ceiling. We've talked about him a bunch of times. I think he's going to be really good. But after watching him in the spring, I think he might be a guy that needs a year. Of those guys, I think Tyler Brown might be the one that can impact this team this year the most. He's got the speed. He's just quick as a hiccup, man. He makes plays in space. He can get you some yards after the catch. And that's some of the things that this offense has lacked in recent years. And I think he can give you that. We'll see how early he gets an opportunity. And when he does get his opportunity, we'll see what he does with it. But this wide receiver room has to be better this year. And for me, first and foremost, it starts with keeping Bo Collins and Adam Randall healthy, because I expect Antonio Williams to take a massive jump from what we saw as a freshman. You know what you're going to get out of him.
Jason, we've had too many conversations. You're anticipating my next question. So I was going to ask you about the breakout guy for the 2023 class. You covered that. I was going to ask you about, I understand the legacy is ridiculous when you talk about Watkins and Hopkins and Bryant and Scott and Renfro and Ross, and we could keep going. But Antonio Williams, would he be the likely candidate to be that kind of guy?
I don't know. We'll see. When I think of that kind of guy, Antonio played mostly in the slot last year. When I think of that kind of guy, I think of, I call him the alpha dog. You need an alpha dog. Clemson's not had an alpha dog to pass since T. Higgins left, really. You haven't had that alpha wide receiver. And when I think of the alpha guy, I'm not necessarily thinking of a slot guy. I'm thinking of a guy on the outside who can just take over a game when you need him to, like Mike Williams did against Alabama, like we saw T. Higgins do on multiple occasions. We saw Sammy Watkins do it, New Hopkins do it. Saw Martavis Bryant do it from time to time. We've seen a number of guys take on that role. I don't know if Antonio's that guy or not. I think and that's not to knock Antonio Williams, because I think he's already proven that he's going to be a good receiver at this level. I think he's going to be even better this year. For me, if there's one guy on the roster right now that has that potential, I think it's Randall. Big guy. He can move. He's faster than he looks. I know it didn't really look like it when he was on the field last year, but again, I don't think he was ever fully recovered from that knee injury. He's a guy I watched a lot coming up through high school. I think he's a guy that can kind of, when you need him to, he can put your offense on his back and carry you. I think he's got that kind of talent, that kind of potential. Again, he's just got to stay healthy. To me, that's the key thing with him. We've seen some of those videos they put out of the highlight reel catches he's made during practice before he got hurt last year. We just need to see that translate onto the field of play in real games. And again, he's got to stay healthy.
Folks, we've got an Amazon link in the description section of all the videos. If you grab the Amazon link and use that when you shop on Amazon, you help us grow and build the channel. And it's the same exact shopping experience for you. Doesn't change in any way, and it doesn't cost you a penny. We got Jason Priester here breaking down Clemson's offense. So we go from a position of a ton of questions, a ton of doubt, guys that need to prove themselves, to a position where Will Shipley, stud, probably the best back in the conference, Phil Maffa, and maybe one of the best running back rooms in all of college football.
Oh yeah, you've got, if you're just talking about the top two guys at the depth chart, that the top two guys on the depth chart, you got one of the better running back duos in the country right there at Clemson, and Will Shipley and Phil Maffa. It's going to be interesting to see how they divvy some of those carries up this year. We all heard the rumors last year that Maffa was close to transferring, and he decided against it. I think a big part of that was him telling him he's going to be more involved in the offense. So I'm kind of curious to see how they work this out with both of those guys, both in their junior years. Both could be in what I call their money year. They could both potentially be going to the NFL after this season. Got to think Garrett Riley's got a good plan to handle that. There's a reason why he's one of the best wide receivers one of the best offensive coordinators in the country. I think this is going to be an offense, I know it's got air raid tendencies and all of that, but Garrett Riley's offenses have been known to run the football. And I think Clemson's going to run the football and run it a lot. And I think we're going to see a lot more Maffa than we have in the past. Behind him, you got Dominique Thomas. He was your third guy last year. He's a former walk-on who has absolutely earned his scholarship. He transferred in for last season. They call him Quadzilla because his thighs are so big, man. Just a big, powerful running back. And you got Keith Adams Jr., the fourth guy. He's going into his second year with the team now. And then you got a couple of freshmen, Jarvis Green, Jay Haynes. I'd expect at least one of those guys to redshirt. Neither were early enrollees. Wouldn't shock me if they both redshirted. Well, we just have to wait and see how that works out. But I kind of lean towards thinking maybe both those guys take a red shirt.
Jason, I don't know what's wrong with me. Let's go back to the tight ends. Jake Briningstool, 25 catches last year, 4 touchdowns. Davis Allen, is he gone?
Yeah, he's gone. He is in the NFL now. So
Okay.
this is Briningstool's job, and he's going into his, third year with the team. Big tight end target, man. He can be what I call a matchup nightmare for opposing defensive coordinators. And I think there are a lot of different ways Garrett Riley's going to be able to use Briningstool in this offense. We just got to see how that translates. How much is he split out wide? How much is he lined up inside? I tend to think he's going to be split out a lot in this Garrett Riley offense. And he took a big jump between his freshman, sophomore seasons. I think he's going to take another big jump now that he's the guy. Behind him, you have Sage Enos, who is probably known more for his blocking than his pass-catching abilities. And there's Josh Sapp, who redshirted last year, who I think has the potential to take a big jump in his development this year. And I think he could be a contributor at some point this season. We'll see how it works out on the depth chart behind Briningstool if Enos can hold off Sapp. And there's a couple of intriguing freshmen that are coming in. Marcus Dixon and Olsen Pat Henry, two what I thought were very underrated tight ends. Probably going to redshirt this year, at least one of them. There's a lot to like about both those guys. They are very talented pass catchers. I think they'll fit in well with this offense in the future.
Because Briningstool isn't the big inline, mauler, massive, big body guy. He's more angular, tall, big wingspan.
6'7". He's a big guy, but he's tall and thin. He's more of a pass catcher than a blocker. So I tend to think we're going to see him lined up out wide a lot. That's where his strengths are, catching the ball down the field and being that safety valve for the quarterback and stretching the field.
Fall camp is straight ahead. We got Jason Priester here from allclemsontigers.com to break down those Tigers. And we have looked at the entire offense. We will continue with the offensive line. Those are the guys that make it all work. Jason, I'm looking at 99 career starts coming back for an offensive line that brings back basically the 4 starters. And Will Putnam's the guy that's been around basically forever at center. And he's played, obviously, the other interior positions.
Yeah, Clemson brings back a ton of experience this year. 4 starters. You only have to replace Jordan McFadden over there at left tackle. Fully expect Tristan Lee to get first crack at that job. That's kind of been the general consensus, heading out of last season. He was there during the spring. Coaches are talking him up at media day last week. Former 5-star guy. He's been in the program a couple years now. So I remember talking to him a little bit after the Orange Bowl loss to Tennessee, and he said he was ready. He's been preparing for 2 years to kind of step into this role after McFadden left, and he thinks he's ready to do so. That would be the ideal situation. Lee slides in there, and you don't have to disrupt anything at any other position. Hopefully it works out that way for them. I think they've got a lot of depth this year, but I've said that the last 2 years and been wrong. So take that with a grain of salt. I think Clemson's recruited well along the offensive line the past 2 or 3 classes. Really loved what they brought in the last recruiting cycle. I think true freshman Harris Sewell has a chance to be in the 2 deep this season. Colin Sadler is a guy they brought in 2022 who redshirted last year. I think he's going to be in the 2 deep. Dietrich Pennington's a guy that's been here a couple years now. Got hurt, put on some weight. Looks a lot better now. Saw him. I think I can't remember. I saw him a few weeks ago. I can't remember where it was exactly when I was up there, but He looks like he shed some weight and is in better shape now. This is a kid they were expecting to compete for playing time as a freshman. Now he's been here 2 years. It hadn't worked out that way. We'll see if he can crack that too deep and get some playing time. Mitchell Mays is a guy that started some games last season. Marcus Tate, sophomore, there at left guard, got hurt late last season. He's ready to roll now. So you got a lot of experience coming back. That also includes Blake Miller, who started as a true freshman there at right tackle last season. And there's a lot of flexibility with how they can move some of those guys around if they needed to. For me, the biggest question is who's going to be the backup center? How much depth do you have at center there behind Putnam? Ryan Linthicum is a guy who's been in this system in the system a couple years now, or in the program a couple years now, not the same system, so to speak. But is he ready to take that next step? Trent Howard's a guy that's played some center. Thomas Austin talked a little bit about that last week when we met with him. It's kind of hard to rotate centers in games, and it was going to be up to him to kind of try and build some depth throughout the season. We'll see if they're able to do that. That was when he talked about playing up to maybe 10 guys. He said that last year too. Didn't pan out that way. They've kind of rolled with the same 5 or 6 the last couple of years. They need more depth along that line this season, and I think they're finally going to have some.
Jason, you mentioned Miller with the 14 starts as a true freshman. Is he the guy with the biggest ceiling? Who would be the guy that most likely would show up on a first-team all-conference or maybe even an All-America list if he plays up to his potential?
I would go with him if I had to pick just one out of the starting 5 this year. I think playing as a freshman is going to bode real well for him this season. It's going to pay off dividends. There was a learning curve for him. Those first few games, he was up and down a little bit, but really settled in as the season progressed. And most players take their biggest jumps between their freshman and sophomore seasons. I don't see why he wouldn't do the exact same thing. And he's got that nastiness, that you like to see in offensive lineman. He's a very physical player. It's just got that mean streak in him sometimes when you need it. And that's something that's kind of been lacking along that offensive line at times in the past few years.
All right, folks, please like the video. You enjoy the content, please like the video. It's easy to do. Subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell for the notifications to know when we go live. Head on over to allclemsontigers.com. Check out Jason's work. This is the time to do it. Fall camp's right here. ACC kickoff means 3 days of media accessibility with the various coaches and players in the ACC. So check out Jason's work during ACC kickoff. Jason, appreciate you stopping by.
Always a pleasure, man. Appreciate it.